Shalom, shalom. Shalom, brothers and sisters, shalom. Giving honor and praise unto our Maker, the Most High, the one who sees all and is not seen, the one who judges all and is not judged. This is your brother and friend, Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the house of Israel. Brothers and sisters, this presentation is brought to you by Danitepublications. We hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. The topic, brothers and sisters, may seem a little unusual to some, but it is in, brothers and sisters, in due love and respect that we sit there and care to bring this out for reference purposes. This must be said, Leviticus and Harlots. Now, Leviticus, brothers and sisters, is the third book in the scriptures when you read and what is referred to as the said Old Testament, if you will. And brothers and sisters, in due respect of that, it speaks, as in other parts of the book, about harlots and harlotry. Now, the Hebrew word for harlot is zonah. It comes from the Hebrew word zana, which means to go astray. But brothers and sisters, we want to point out, or should I say, and brothers and sisters, we want to point out that a harlot can be a male or a female. When the children of Israel went astray, they were referred to as harlots in the book of Hosea and in other aspects, if you will. So, brothers and sisters, Hosea was, say, 10 years or so before the timing of prophet Isaiah, round off in time, maybe 10 or 20 years. And then there's about a good 60 or so years between Isaiah and Jeremiah. So now in the book of Hosea, where Israel is referred to as a harlot, you have it to where over 60 years later, in the book of Jeremiah, it says that you have a whore's or a harlot's forehead, you refuse to be ashamed. Brothers and sisters, what do we mean when we say refuse to be ashamed? Is that if a person does something that is not correct, there are some who can sit there and have the spirit that says, well, you know, that doesn't matter. There are some, and no disrespect intended, brothers and sisters, that have the spirit that will sit there and state, regret nothing. When you find those kind of energies in people saying regret nothing, be careful, because he or she doesn't have a litmus on righteousness, because he or she doesn't have any regrets for anything done. Now, there is not, as Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 20 points out, a man that does good and does not sin. Everyone has sinned. But when you deal with the mentality, brothers and sisters, that says, in quote, regret nothing, that means that, again, you have no litmus toward righteousness. There is no standard to say, no, I'm not going to do that. No, we shouldn't do that. Let that not be the case, and so forth and so on. So that is the mindset that it speaks of when it says you have a whore's forehead in Jeremiah chapter 3. You refuse to be ashamed. You don't have any regrets for anything that you've done. This does not, on the other hand, also mean that you sit and wallow in regret, that you always find yourself, I apologize, I apologize, I apologize, I apologize, and so forth and so on. You apologize and change your ways. Like it says in the book of Isaiah, wash you, make you clean, put away the evil of your doings. So we have that kind of power within us, brothers and sisters, to sit there and wash ourselves spiritually, put away the evil of our doings. Cease to do evil, learn to do well. So that means that, as we read in Isaiah chapter 1, learn to do well, which means that we have to be teachable. And you cannot, brothers and sisters, pick your teacher all the time in that particular case. So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to point out. And again, I say this in no disrespect. It's not per se like a Hebrew class where you can sit there and pick your teacher, if you will. This, on the other hand, is a little different. You understand? This is more so about being able to sit there and be teachable, sitting up there and being able to pick up wisdom for it wherever it may come from, and not sit there and be defensive thinking it is an attack. And even if a person means it as an attack, you can still take it for the wisdom of what it is, even if they are showing at the same token themselves to not even be generally concerned. You have, brothers and sisters, people who are energy vampires. You have, brothers and sisters, people who are pessimists. We have to sit there and know how to discern, say the spirit, say between the two. But this also means, at the same token, that you have to have a clear mind. What do I mean between a clear mind and a mind that is already made up? Is this: you have no intention in that particular case to sit there and take heed to anything. Your mind, your thought, your focus is already decided. I remember, not to name any names, speaking with a person about a particular breakup that happened within a couple. And one of the people in a couple was saying, I'm not going to sit there and ask the other party why you did such and such. No, I'm not asking. I'm not asking. That does go to show that you didn't want the answer, because it may have not been the answer that you would have wanted. You have already created your own focus on how things could and should be. You've already created your own concept of how things should have already been planned out. So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to sit there and bring out for reference purposes. All right. So we ask you all to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Let us, brothers and sisters, if we will, pull up the PowerPoint. Thank you for that. This is not a very long PowerPoint presentation, but we do want to sit there and bring this out for reference purposes. Shalom. Giving honor to the Most High. This presentation is brought to you by Danitepublications, which is actually the website, Danitepublications.com. We can be reached at 908-587-4841. Subscribe to the channel. Brothers and sisters, do you know when your spirit is genuine in decency and in good, that which is not able to see its light will sit there and flay away from you? It's not your job at that point, brothers and sisters, to sit there and run and follow that in that particular case. Let us go and read, if we will. Brothers and sisters, going to have to ask you if you can be on your phone on the scriptures or pull out the scriptures. We want to read in Proverbs chapter 9, brothers and sisters, for reference purposes. We are in the scriptures in Proverbs chapter 9, and we're going to be reading, brothers and sisters, in verse 5. Thank you for that. It says the following. Proverbs chapter 9, verse 5. Come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. We have spoke upon this matter before. Forsake the foolish, that's one, and live. Not just exist, but live. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. He that reproveth for scorner getteth to himself shame, and he that rebuketh for wicked man getteth himself a blot. Now, brothers and sisters, when you look at the description, how does this fit in? You have recently, no disrespect intended, black men, and I'm not trying to be racial, if we will, that are up there congratulating other black men in sports or not about saying he may not want to sit there and have custody or visitation with his own child because he doesn't get along with the mother of the child. This reminds me back when I was in a congregation in Israel, and the people in there would say concerning couples, talk, and when you're done talking, talk some more. Because what happens in that particular case is you'll begin to sit there and learn each other, how each other think. You don't have to, sister, you understand, talk about, I'm using my third eye. I don't have to sit there and say nothing. I could sit there and watch from the scenes, from the background. No, be in somebody's face respectfully so y'all can sit there and talk. You don't have to be in the background trying to sit there and observe. You can sit there and hear, because the more you talk, the more you reveal yourself. You understand? But when you find, and I say this in no disrespect intended, well, I'm reading with my third eye, and this is the kind of thing that I'm into, and so forth and so on, it means that we lack communication skills that are basic. You understand? So these are things in part, again, that we care to sit there, if we will, family, to bring this out for reference purposes. We are on the platforms, Mora Yeshaya Torah Lessons, Mora Yeshaya History Lessons, and the Facebook profile, Yeshaya Author Danites. Brothers and sisters, we ask you, whatever platform you may see this on, to subscribe to it. And we hope and pray again that everybody is well and will be better. Now, we want to, brothers and sisters, point out that in the scriptures, it speaks about the son seeing the ways of his father. In the scriptures, it talks about the daughter taken away after her mother, watching her mother as an example. One being in Ezekiel 18, the other being in Ezekiel chapter 16. You understand? One with the son seeing the ways of his father, the other with the daughter taken after the ways of her mother. So within, say, for the lack of a better term, the black community, there has been ran in many cases by single parent households. And that right there, we can say that it was encouraged by the government by, quote, removing a man out in order for things to be subsidized within the house. But what can we say now when you have, quote, men and women making their own paper? When after, correct me if I'm wrong, 1974, a woman was able to sit there and get her own bank account. What reason then do we have now to sit there and say that when we got black people, whether you're from the United States or the Caribbean, that are the landlords? So you don't have to sit there and, quote, go through the government as much as, say, the 40s, 50s, 60s, and into the 70s. So what is the reason now for, quote, the man being out of the house, if that was ever a reason to begin with in the first place? So, brothers and sisters, how does this boil down and part of what we're talking about? If you read, if we will, in the scriptures, you will know that, no disrespect intended, Dinah went out among the daughters of the land. And then she was sexually active with a person. There was no way with Jacob, her father, and 11 brothers, that any man was going to sit there and go into Jacob's house and be carnal or sexual with Dinah. That was not happening when you got 11 brothers and your father there. You understand? Having that family structure prevents certain kind of things. The Proverbs, correct me if I'm wrong, chapter 30, it says a child left to his own imagination will have wicked thoughts. And when you have, brothers and sisters, more structure, a village, if you will, when you have more structured marriages, if you will begin to sit there and see how that kind of matter doesn't sit there and become poisonous and rottenness. Where that kind of matter, brothers and sisters, doesn't sit there and fester and sit there and then become the norm, if you will. And so, brothers and sisters, black people, our people, as we continue in this presentation, are the only people who pride on being single and alone, who think that that is the normal way to be, who sit there and encourage others to sit there and be in that kind of way. But speaking as a brother, speaking as a man, what I've noticed, and not to be disrespectful, having sisters, being around females, being around brothers, is people encourage, for the lack of a better term, the black female to be single, male and female alike do this. But when a brother chooses to be single, then it's what happened to the lady. Then it's, oh my gosh, y'all need to get back. What did you do, brother? But then, for the same token, once it comes down, say not to be misogynistic, once it comes down to the female, it's, yeah, girl, you did what you had to do. You strong, you got this. The man is not told in many cases, you strong and got this. You need to breathe. You need to take time. But once it comes down, not trying to be funny, I'm talking from experience as well in this. Once it comes down, say, to the female in that particular case, relatives and otherwise, it's, well, do what you got to do. You're strong. It's been like that for quite some time, and blah, blah, blah. You understand? The male is asked, what happened? And with the female, in many cases, like, well, he must have been a problem. Is she asked what happened by males or females? Or do you have the catty female who wouldn't ever want to see another sister to be happy if her and a man can make up? Do you have the covetous males that will sit there and be okay with the sister being single, though he'll never want to be in a relationship with her? So he would sit there and, quote, entertain her talking against the brother or another man, even if it's her current man or ex-man. See, these are the kind of things and poisonous things that have filtered within our people. When we read, brothers and sisters, in the scriptures, in the Bible, in Jeremiah, it says, for among my people are found wicked men. That's in Jeremiah chapter 5. Now, brothers and sisters, We're going to go over some scriptures in this, and we want to sit there and bring the book to life by showing what we're talking about for reference. We'll be reading mainly out of the King James Version and the Apocrypha. All right. So let's bring it out. We must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision, but we must speak. Our limited vision. We don't know everything. So maybe the third eye does not exist, or it does exist. But brothers and sisters, our vision is limited. And we must present this with humility. O house of Israel. I remember speaking to some brothers and sisters recently about Israelites who may not know themselves, our people who may not know themselves as Israel, eating certain things. Oh, those people are just scavengers. Those people are rebellious. No, these are your co-workers that you sit there and wait for Thursday and Friday to get to check with. We forgot that. These are your neighbors that might be cooking pork or shrimp, crab, and lobster next door, and we unfortunately sometimes have to deal with the smell. These are the people, brothers and sisters, that could become some of our people's teachers, because my immediate teachers in the house of Israel, oh house of Israel, pay attention, please, were not born or raised in this. Some of them had different understandings growing up. Some of their diets changed as time went on. So now when we read this thing here, stated by Martin Luther King, may he rest in peace, we must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision. It is the Most High who opens up the eyes. I remember recently I had to sit there and explain to somebody online or offline, well, those people, they're not like us. Oh, they worship gods of wood and stone. What? And we don't? We don't sit there and go after the paper and sometimes neglect our own self. We don't sit there and fight sleep to sit there and make sure I got to get that guap, I got to get that income, I got to pay this bill. Or we sitting up there and making that more than important than even our own selves in certain cases? Are we not told, brothers and sisters, that the wicked is cruel to his own flesh? So not to be disrespectful or anything of that kind of sort, none of us are clean. But when you can sit there online or offline and say those people are not like us, when you work with them, ride the train with them, be on a highway with them, speaking the same language as them, I want to say, not to sound disrespectful, bring me to where you are, because my flesh and blood cousins eat pork. I got, while we're talking about Leviticus and Harlots, no disrespect intended, I got family members that sat there and said, keeping the language clean, yeah, that N-word crashed into the car while he was looking at my A. I have female cousins that talk about dudes hurting themselves or their car, crashing into things or hurting themselves and walking because she saw him gawking at her behind. This is my flesh and blood I'm talking about. So I'm sitting up there trying to sit there, brothers and sisters, as we bring this kind of matter out, if we will, with all humility that is appropriate to our limited vision. Don't you ever sit there using, for the lack of a better term, the white man's internet and looking down on your own brother and sister. Don't ever do that. We can't impart the spirit that Jonah had. You went and you prophesied about people not seeing good if they don't change their ways. And then you sit there like Jonah on top, just essentially waiting for somebody's destruction. That right there is not good. Brothers and sisters, just like people say you shouldn't take a picture of you doing charitable work, like giving somebody who's hungry food, or somebody who needs money, or somebody who needs clothes. So is it the same? Should it not be a thing where you praise your own self, where those people eat unclean and those people are scavengers and they're not like us? When you go to a job, in certain cases, depending upon who you are and what you do, where you O house of Israel, mixed garments. Did you know that? A lot of the uniforms that jobs endorse is 50% this and 20% this and so forth and so on. That's a mixed garment. That is against the culture of the house of Israel. But we do it in the lands of our captivity. Like it says in the book of Nehemiah, we are taken captive and they have possession over our bodies. So we are not where we're supposed to be, oh brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. So we need to stop looking down on brothers and sisters. Stop it. It does not look good. You understand? So now when we read in the scriptures, not unto us, O Yah, not unto us, but unto thy name, give the glory in Psalms 115. So when we come to this understanding, the Most High gets the glory. But are you saying, may the Most High open his or her eyes? See, the prophet Moses wished, or hoped, should I say, because I'm funny style with the word wish, but we want to say this, all right? I'm going to look into that as time goes on regarding the etymology of the word wish, W-I-S-H. But getting back into the point, if we will, family, all right, of saying Moses hoped he would that all the people were prophets. That's what he told Joshua. Are you jealous for my sake? I would that all the people were prophets so they can sit there and see. So when you are already at a certain position, you want others, if you have any kind of humility, to shine with you. When Moses came from the mount, it says his face shone with beams. He didn't see his own light or the light that was put upon him. But when you know that it's there, and if you have any humility and love for your brothers and sisters, you want them to have the same thing. You don't want to sit there and have to go through, not trying to talk politics, what Trump is going through. They want to shut down the Department of Education, and the court blocked it. They want to sit there and fire this person and that person, and the courts are bringing them back in if they want it. Because now you got problems in this case in that matter. You understand? Like it says about Esau in the book of Obadiah, the pride of your heart hath beguiled thee. So we don't want to be like the description of Esau in the book of Obadiah. You understand? That's not something we want to be about. If I can be heard well and people in good spirits, please type in the number 1. If I can be heard well and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 1 and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. We must speak with all the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision, but we must speak. Let's continue, family, in this. We must speak on this. Exodus chapter 20, brothers and sisters. And we're not going to type out, say the whole matter. We're going to read certain verses of it, but just show the chapter in certain cases. In certain parts, you might see the verse, but we're not copy and pasting the whole thing in that particular matter. Let's look at this, if we will, family. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 14. And let's get into this. Thank you. It says this. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Adultery, brothers and sisters, is when a man, whether he is married or not, has sexual intercourse with a woman who is married. It is when a woman who is married has sexual intercourse with a man, whether he's married or not. It talks about the prophets and the priests committing adultery in ancient Israel. The book of Hosea, chapter 4, we went over the timeline. It's over 60 or so years between Hosea and Jeremiah. So if Hosea was talking about adultery being done, and Jeremiah is talking about 60 years after that, that adultery is being done, Israel in ancient times was on some stuff that was not good. We also read in verse 17 of Exodus 20, where it says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. What is pointed out right there, family? You should not covet thy neighbor's wife. Once you know a lady has a significant other, a man in her life, whether she is what they call, quote, whole married, whatever not being whole married means, leave her alone. Some brothers have asked, well, what if she was lying about having a man? Then that may have been your way to say, well, I'm leaving you alone. See, these videos that you see that come online these days, brothers and sisters, talking about gold digger prank and everything of that kind of sort, where you got a man and then you're still saying, let me get your number. No, I don't need your number at that point. We have nothing to talk about because my intention was to try to see if you can be my lady. So if you have a man, that cannot happen. So there's no point in me going any further in conversation regarding that. But brothers and sisters, these are the kind of things that we want to sit there when we say we must speak on this to sit there and bring out. When, brothers and sisters, you find people like Puffy was singing songs saying, your man don't know you like I do. What are you talking about? You're straight wicked for that, brother. You understand? Ladies, leave your man at home. Go to the club because the guys got their pockets full blown or something like that that Destiny's Child was singing back in the day. That too is also wicked. You understand? But if you want to listen to certain cases of internet personalities, which is engrossed in certain cases of wickedness, they want to sit there and kowtow to it or give a, quote, spiritual allowance to it. Let me give an example. When you hear the statement that says, well, when a woman is in a relationship and she, quote, cheats or a marriage and commits adultery, she's doing it because of her emotions. Doesn't make it right. Your emotions and your feelings does not equate righteousness. If a man does that, it's because he's just a hound. If a woman does it, it's because she was put in that situation. And men who are into being covetous will sit there and talk and deal with that. And talk about that. And encourage that. And brothers and sisters, when you are into that, there's no blessings coming from that kind of stuff. You understand? Proverbs chapter 6, if you will. We're going to read in Proverbs 6, verse 32. All right, thank you for that. So we can gain what we're talking about for reference purposes. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 32. Let's see what it says. Thank you for that, family. But whoso committeth adultery with the woman lacketh understanding. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. Read that again. But whoso committeth adultery with the woman lacketh understanding. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. Earlier in conversing in certain cases, right? A brother was told, we not living in biblical times. Does that change because you refuse to keep the commandments the result of breaking the commandments? No, it doesn't. There's nothing new under the sun. So to the brother or sister, or to the people who say, we're not living in biblical times, there's another side that's going to come in regards with that, called perilous times. The result of your actions, the consequences of the things that you've done. The Most High in Ecclesiastes, it says, the Most High will bring every work into judgment, whether it be good or whether it be evil. So we want to be, quote, brothers and sisters, on the good side. Why would you not want to be on, quote, the good side? You understand? But yeah, there are people who out there who feel that way. That, well, we're not living in biblical times. So then you deal with the other side that the Bible talks about, destroying your own soul in that particular case. Because see, what happens when you're dealing with a woman who has a man, who has a husband, and she is an adulteress, she doesn't love you. She doesn't love herself. And you don't love her, knowing that she has a man, a husband, knowing that she has a significant other that is a brother, a male, because I want to cover all quote unquote bases. Because even if they're not quote unquote, as today silly terminology, whole married, or he has a whole wife, or she has a whole husband, whatever that kind of silliness is, don't deal with that. Let's go to Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, so we can gain some understanding. All right. Again, this is not to be long, but just want to point this out, if we will, regarding reference purposes. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Now, brothers and sisters, it distinctly says right there that Adam, Adam, is a man who yada ek hawa ishto, wa tahar wa tele ek wayin, wa tomar kwaniti ish et ya. Brothers and sisters, and the man Adam, or and Adam and the man knew Eve, his wife. This knowing in the biblical sense means sexuality. But what has happened now on and offline with brothers? You didn't take time to know her, like the old song says. Take time to know her. I don't know who sings it. I should have looked it up. I'm sorry about that. And I can't sing. You understand? Then when the consequences come from not knowing each other, he finds out he's a dodo. He finds out she's a dodo. Now it's drama. Now it's chaos. But you were saying we're not living in, quote, biblical times. You were saying we're living in now times, as if the ancient ones did not experience certain things themselves and left it on record on how to be careful in certain cases. How to sit there and look out for the perilous matters, the drama that many of us are in today. Again, this is not to be disrespectful, offensive, taking shots, disrespecting, or anything of that kind of sort. You understand? But the ancients left things on record for a reason. Adultery was happening during the time when Solomon was writing Proverbs. So you were able to speak upon a certain situation. You understand? Let's go, if you will, to Proverbs chapter 21, verse 20. And it reads as follows. Thank you for that, family. There is treasure to be desired and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man benefit up. This is where people would say they get the citation that says a fool and his money soon depart. How, brothers and sisters, in part does a fool and one's money depart from each other? Not being wise. Not maybe storing some away, not just for a, quote, rainy day, but just for yourself, for those whom you love. That's called intelligence. Let's read this again. It says, if we will, right? There is treasure to be desired and oil in the dwelling of the wise. Treasure and oil. You're going to need oil to cook. In those days, you'll need oil to burn things. You're going to need oil, depending upon what kind it is, for your hair, because it says, let your hair lack no ointment. These things are needed. But it also says, brothers and sisters, but the foolish man spinneth it up. I'm just balling. I could care less about, I'll deal with it when the time comes. Sometimes, no disrespect, and it's not to sound sexist, you find certain women saying, I'm going to just ride it till the wheels fall off. But what happens when the wheels fall off, sweetheart, and then you fall on your behind? That is not intelligent. You understand? So we don't want to be the fool, male or female alike. You understand? Proverbs chapter 6, verse 26, if we will. Thank you for that, family. And it reads as follows. For by means of a harlot, a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. Brothers and sisters, don't be into that adultery kind of matter. It says, for the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. The precious life of who? The adulterer, her own self, or not trying to be disrespectful, even a child, because now it's like, oh, snap. There are cases where women in married relationships had to sit there and feel they needed to get an abortion in order to hide the pregnancy from her cheating in a relationship. That's what happens when you live in dirty. You understand? When you have a clear conscience on how you move as a man or a woman, You move with your integrity, as it says. And it's not to shame nobody. Remember Steve Harvey? Even when Monique, the comedian, was trying to talk about the integrity, and Steve Harvey was saying, before the integrity game, there was the money game. And not too long after that, they replaced him with this person and the other person. This is the guy, no offense intended, hopefully the man changed, that said to white people, excuse my language, to say to black people, I don't give a damn about slavery. So I already know you're a fool. So now when you're sitting up there and have a concept such as telling descendants of the enslavers to tell the enslaved, I don't, quote, give a damn about it, and you laugh at it, when somebody named something Markle was replaced you on a talk show, it didn't affect many of us as a people because we already seen how you moved. He who walketh in his security walks in his integrity. Again, nobody is perfect. You understand? But Mr. Harvey and others, my brothers, my elders, my peers, the next generation after me, born in 1980 myself, you cannot sit there and not live upright and expect everything to go well, thinking we're not living in, quote, biblical times. Oh, yes, we are. We're living in a time that the Bible talks about the sword bereaves in and out. We're living in a time that the Bible talks about, brothers and sisters, where it says 10 women shall make bread for one man and deliver to him, and he shall eat and not be satisfied. We are living in a time when it says the woman that is tender and delicate, her eyes shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom and toward her children, whom she shall bear, for the want of all things in secret. We are living, brothers and sisters, in the times that the Bible talks about. One ran from a bear, ran into a lion, leaned upon a wall, and the serpent bit him. Problems all over the place. These are the times that the Bible talks about that we're living in. So when we sit there and think online or offline, we're not living in biblical times, you did not, maybe, no offense intended, read the Bible, because, oh yeah, we are. Because just like we pointed out, on account of a harlot, is a man brought to a loaf of bread. When you are out there tricking as a man, a sugar daddy, with your quote unquote sugar baby, and everything of that kind of sort, that's what it is. When you become a stay kind of man for her, but you're not having no future, there's no commitment in that. That is foolishness. Marriages is what the scriptures promote. I know of people who sit there and say, well, traditionally, the way was such and such. But when you now look at what happens when you don't follow, quote unquote, tradition, when you don't want righteousness in a matter, you know what happens? Wickedness comes in and it gets comfortable. Sin crouches at the door until you is his desire, but you can rule over it. But what you call traditional or the old way, let's go to Jeremiah chapter 6, if we will, is lame to some people. So now, going back in Jeremiah, if we will, chapter 6, we're going to read in Jeremiah 6, verse 16. And it says the following, if we will, family. Thus saith the Most High, stand ye in the ways and see, and act for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk therein. In other words, go in a good way, and you shall find rest for your souls. So when you not finding rest for your souls, brothers and sisters, maybe if we took the old path, what you call tradition, then we'll have less problems with spouses. We'll have less children having to sit there and be diagnosed by certain things because the family structure is already there. Did you know that single parent households was on the rise prior to all of the children, mainly males? with ADHD. You understand? And like has been pointed out, we were the people that was fed that kind of garbage. To sit back and think that we can sit there and do everything on our own and we don't need nobody. You got men and women saying that. When the scriptures, the old path, if you will, says it's not good for man to be alone. But again, as pointed out before, if a man is single, well, you just take that time and get yourself together. It's not get yourself together and get a lady so she could be a helpmate to you. No, that's not what we endorsing with our own people. What we say to the males is take the time and get yourself together. But once it comes down, and I'm talking from what I've heard and seen, sisters with that, it's like, yeah, well, a man is, not a necessity, an option. I'm talking from what I've heard, family. So these are things that we care to bring out for reference purposes. We have to, as the matter points out in the description, we are men, we are leaders, we are kings. You do not, as a king, deal with one who cannot understand being a queen. Queen. You do not deal with one who doesn't understand being a king. We have to sit there and elevate, say, each other. We have to, for the lack of a better term, stroke each other's ego, because if we don't, then who else is? Ego truly means, from the Latin, meaning self, like I as in self. That's really where it comes from. So if she's not strengthening him and he's not strengthening her, then what is the point? Who are you strengthening? Again, we are the people who sit there and feel, I got everything by myself. I can sit there and handle everything by myself. It's foolishness. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha. We're going to read in chapter 9 from verse 3 to verse 7, actually. All right? Ecclesiasticus chapter 9, verse 3. And it reads on this wise. Meet not with a harlot, lest thou fall into her snares. Use not much the company of a woman that is a singer, lest thou be taken with her attempts. Gaze not on a maid, that thou fall not by those things that are precious in her. Give not thy soul unto harlots, that thou lose not thine inheritance. Look not around about thee in the streets of the city, neither wander thou in the solitary places thereof. What is verse 7 saying when we read right there? It says, look not around in the streets of the city. Men, don't go to the clubs looking for these kind of women. Do you understand? Sisters, don't sit there and give yourself, as in today's terminology and time frame, and what they call, quote unquote, only fans and things of that kind of nature. Let's read again. It says what in verse 3? Meet not with the harlot, lest thou fall into her snares. What is the snares? I'm going to sit there and catch him on his child support. That's one in today's time. But yet we got people saying you're not living in biblical times. Oh, yes, we are, because these things were written to keep us away from, as men, the wicked women, and for those who are women, from the wicked man. The book of Proverbs speaks about the wicked man. It's the man that points with his fingers and scrapes with his feet. You know what that's being called? A simp. A sucker, for the lack of a better term. He points with his fingers and scrapes with his feet. That's in Proverbs 6. He doesn't pick his feet up and make steps and moves like a man. He scrapes his feet like as if he's an elder woman with slippers on or something of that kind of nature. You understand? Let's read this again, family. And it says this. Use not much the company of a woman that is a singer, lest thou be taken with her attempts. Can you do this? Can you do that? No, because we're not at a certain space. Or yes, because we are developing a certain space. It depends on one situation. Again, if you're wise for yourself, brothers and sisters. But in these days and times, when you find, for the lack of a better term, black men talking about, not to be disrespectful, I ain't spending nothing on no chick. I ain't doing this. I ain't doing that. And when you got sisters up there saying, I ain't doing this, I ain't doing that, we're the only bees like the I ain't people. I ain't this and I ain't that. Meanwhile, because we're stuck in our feelings, X, Y, and Z, time is going on. Things are happening in the world. And no offense intended, like Jonah in the bottom of the ship when things was going tumultuous in the sea, and he was fast asleep, so many of our people fast asleep today. So these are things, brothers and sisters, we care to bring out for reference purposes. All right? So, not to be redundant, but when you say that we're not living in biblical times, you must have not known what the Bible was talking about. Because it talks about for women, the certain kind of man to be with, and for a man, a certain kind of woman to be with. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 29 says the following. It says this. Leviticus 19:29 says, do not prostitute thy daughter to make her a harlot, lest the land fall into whoredom, and the land become full of wickedness. Profane not thy daughter to cause her to be a harlot. I'm not trying to shame the little girl, but Al Sharpton spoke about you before on the platform. You bring in your little princess to Don Imus, and excuse my language, saying, in question, is she a nappy-headed hoe? Sorry, not to be racial. Ain't no white man bringing his little meatball, as they call their daughters, to a black man that's a politician or not, and saying, what do you sit there and think about? We're the only people who do foolishness like that. Yes, Al Sharpton brought his daughter, who was 11 at the time, to Don Imus and sat there and asked, when Don Imus made the offensive statement about the women's basketball team, and said, regarding his daughter to him in a question, is my daughter nappy-headed hoe? But these are the people that we want to sit there and think we should follow. When they sit there and, not to get too personal, tell you, well, you know, we should boycott this and we should boycott that. Meanwhile, your books, Mr. Sharpton, is on Amazon, but you're saying we should sit there and boycott it. It's foolishness. And like it says in the scriptures, the leaders of this people cause them to go astray. That's in Isaiah chapter 9. Like it says in the scriptures, the leaders, the prophets of the people, profit them not. Doesn't sit there and help them in the long run. So we want to sit there and go, and we will now, into 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 16. And then we will culminate what we're talking about, give a conclusion, a verbal solution for us as a people. 1 Kings, if we will, chapter 3, verse 16. Reads as follows. 1 Kings 3:16 says, then came there two women that were harlots unto the king and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass on the third day after I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also, and we were together. There were no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house. So it was only two women who were cited in the scriptures as harlots. One gave birth, and 3 days later, another woman gave birth. Who were and where were the fathers of those women? We know, for those who know the story, that one woman was saying, oh, the dead child is yours and the living one is mine. And then Solomon stated, take the living child and divide it, so each mother will sit there and get part of the dead child. And then one woman said, no, let her have it. And the other woman said, no, it be neither mine nor hers, slay it. So that's how Solomon was able to tell who the mother was. But we want to focus, if you will, not taking anything away from the scriptures, if you will, right? Here where it says, then there came two women who were harlots. Hold on. This is right after, not long after the death of King David. So you had brothels in ancient Israel. You had, for the lack of a better term, harlot houses. I remember living in New York. I'm not going to mention where. They said, yo, if you go down such and such place, that's where all the H women at, all the harlots at. We're going to keep the language a little cleaner. You understand? I remember being in a part of New York, and this is not to shame New York, brothers and sisters, right? Where a pimp was early in the morning talking to the, quote, woman who was, quote, working for him in a way that was not nice. Those things existed then and they exist now. The women that we just read of in 1 Kings chapter 3, it says that they were delivered by themselves. They had a baby by themselves. There was only two women there in the house. So men came up there in the house or elsewhere, impregnated these women. The fathers are not there speaking on their behalf about his or her own child, like many black men today, following some football player saying he doesn't want to sit there and have custody or visitation with his child and think that that's the way to go because of the way she did him. This is why we sit there and talk about talk, and when you're done talking, talk some more to prevent that. You understand? Take the silly movie that had a good point, not to be racial, Falling Down with Michael Douglas. And he kept on talking to the guy that kept lying to him about his origin and where he's from and things of that kind of nature. It was like, I didn't eat in X amount of days. Well, here's a sandwich. Oh, this is all you got kind of thing. If you know the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas, he eventually had the guy to confess that you're a fake. You understand? So what is wrong with the, quote, old way that Jeremiah chapter 6 talks about? When people sat there and talked and then talked. Or as it says in the scriptures, if you wise for yourself. The Apocrypha I equate with the scriptures. When it says, be not hasty to say this person is a friend. Test the person. See one's character. Be willing to be tested. And if you're walking in your integrity and security, then you have nothing to worry about. But on the other hand, if you're a liar, if you're a fake, if you're not trying to change from your ways that are not decent and upright, you're going to say things like, well, forget it. That's that. Get away with that. There are people who reject help because you know that the help that's being given, you probably wouldn't want it. Maybe feel you don't deserve it. In that kind of matter. Be careful, family, listening to certain kind of spirits and people. You know, for instance, the people that sit there, males, we're going to talk about that right now, right? That say this. You know, you deserve better than what you got. There are men that will say that to women. And if she has the horror spirit, she will sit there and agree with that. Like, yeah, you're right. But see, sister, this is what happens. He doesn't respect you, and thus he does not trust you. You want to have trust in a matter, brothers and sisters. When, on the other hand, you have it to where you are okay not stepping up as an alpha male. That's a problem. I said to a friend of mine recently, not playing simp, that as a man, I apologize because of the kind of things looking at it at hindsight, looking at it in near sight, far sight, hindsight, reality matter. Like it says in Isaiah, the daughter of Zion is forsaken. And that, in many cases, is how sisters sit there and feel. So we need, as a people, a revamping, if we will, brothers and sisters. Wash you, make you clean, take the responsibility, make you clean, put away the evil of your doings, be strong and of good courage. These are things that are in the scriptures while we were up there saying this ain't biblical times. So now you deal with the other side that the Bible itself talks about. Where in the Apocrypha it says the wicked woman is the portion of a wicked man. Where it says the woman, if she maintain her man, is full of wrath, contention, and anger. What does that mean? If she has to sit there and do everything, she cannot sit there and be happy in that particular case. But some women, and this is not to bash women or men, you want someone with a sense of humor. That right there is priority. So this clown that you get, this individual that you get that's just there, we go out to the club. We go out and have parties. Once it comes down to 10, 20 years later, where you are, where are you? Because they're not really supposed to say at the end of a sentence, but where are you after X amount of time? When did you take out time to sit there, grassroots for the lack of a better term, and sit there and build upon something? These are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to sit there and bring out for reference purposes. You understand? We want to read this, if we will, in Leviticus chapter 21. So we can gain some understanding of what we're talking about. Learn a lot. Shalom. I see you made a comment. Shalom. Back to you some time ago. But okay. Sorry, I just saw the comment now. We're going to be reading as we close out in Leviticus chapter 21 to gain some understanding of what we're talking about, family. And it says this. And Yah the Most High said unto Moses, speak unto the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say unto them, there shall none be defiled for the dead among his people. Then it goes on to say in Leviticus chapter 21, verse 7, they shall not take a wife that is a harlot or profane, neither shall they take a woman put away from her husband, for he is holy unto his God. So the Levitical priests have a certain standard. It says emphatically, he shall not take a wife that is a whore or profane. Do we know what it means when it says a woman that is profane? And I say this not to shame nobody, a woman that's today called like superhead in today's term. That's not what you call wife material. You go around from man to man to man to man, performing certain kind of sexual acts, and this is what you're known for. That's not good. Like we read and went over that is in Isaiah, wash you, make you clean, put away the evil of your doings. And this presentation is not to bash any man or women, because I'll be the first to tell you I was a thief as a child. You understand? I lost friends on account of that. I got a couple of spigots from mommy on account of that. And so I'm saying all of that, brothers and sisters, to say that none of us is perfect, but we can sit there and work toward that matter in that particular case. Once we know what the scriptures is talking about in Deuteronomy 30, for instance, when it says be strong and of good courage, when we know and understand when it says in the scriptures and Proverbs, he who conquers a city is greater than he who he who conquers his spirit is greater than he who conquers a city. So anybody can sit there and go and give another man a beat down. But if you can sit there and beat down that energy in you, that's not good. That's the issue. You understand? These are things, brothers and sisters, to sit there and talk about for reference purposes. So, family, again, this was not to be long-winded. Just want to sit there and get into this kind of matter, raise the bar. Stop thinking it's about boycotting Target and Walmart and Amazon and making a change with that. The change comes from within. Boycott OnlyFans, brothers. Boycott men who are not serious, sisters. This does not mean you sit there and turn your back on one another. But what it means essentially is that you have a standard for yourself and a standard for others, men and women alike. And there will be less problems. Giving honor and praise unto our Maker, the one who sees all and is not seen, the one who judges all and is not judged. We hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. Somebody wrote in there, thank you. Learned a lot. Good lesson. Somebody also, Shalom Aleichem. Useless spending, bad investments. Yes. That is not intelligent. You want to use your hard-earned money on things that are for investments for the future and things of, say, of that kind of nature, if we will, in that particular case. All right. And I'm asking you all to comment, like, share, and subscribe, share the video. We intend this weekend to come with more presentations because, believe it or not, all of the presentations regarding, quote, Black History Month were not done. So there's some more to still bring out. Stay tuned. We hope and pray everybody is well and will be better. Shalom.